Let's start JustProfessor here. Your brain shuts down when you try to think about too many things at once. You sit down to solve a problem, a real one, something important. And you start thinking through all the variables, all the options, all the possibilities. You try to hold everything in your mind at the same time. You try to consider every angle, every consequence, every detail, and suddenly you cannot think straight anymore. Your mind feels foggy. Your decisions feel harder. You start making mistakes you normally would not make. And you think it is because the problem is difficult, but it is not. The problem is that you overloaded your brain. You tried to process too much at once. And when your brain gets overloaded, it does not work better. It works worse. Way worse. This is called cognitive load bias. And it is the reason smart people make dumb decisions when things get complicated. Here is how it works. Your brain has a limit on how much information it can actively process at one time. Think of it like a workspace, a mental desk. And that desk only has so much room. When you try to hold too many things in your mind at once, you run out of space. And when you run out of space, your brain starts dropping things. Important details, key facts, critical connections. It does not do this on purpose. It just cannot hold everything. So it lets go of whatever seems least urgent. And usually what seems least urgent is actually what matters most. This is why cognitive load bias is so dangerous. It does not just slow you down, it makes you worse. You think you are being thorough by considering everything. But you are actually guaranteeing mistakes. Because your brain cannot handle everything. And when it tries, it fails. Silently. Without you noticing. Most people think more information leads to better decisions. They think if they just consider more factors, weigh more options, analyze more data, they will make smarter choices. But that is not how it works. More information only helps if your brain can process it, and your brain has a fixed capacity. Once you cross that limit, additional information does not make you smarter. It makes you stupider, because you cannot hold it all. So you start guessing, making shortcuts, relying on feelings instead of facts, all while thinking you are being rational. Think about what happens when you are stressed and trying to make a decision. Maybe at work, maybe in your personal life, maybe just planning something complicated. You have 10 things to think about: deadlines, budgets, people, consequences, options. You try to juggle all of them in your head. You try to see how they all connect, how they all interact, and you feel overwhelmed. But instead of recognizing that as a sign to simplify, you push harder. You think if you just focus more, think harder, try longer, you will figure it out. But you will not. Because your brain is already past its limit. And pushing harder does not expand that limit. It just makes you more exhausted. This is what cognitive load bias does. It makes you think that effort equals results. That if you try to think about more things, you will make better decisions. But the opposite is true. When you exceed your cognitive capacity, your decision-making collapses. You miss obvious solutions. You overlook simple errors. You choose worse options than you would have if you simplified the problem. And you do not even realize it is happening. Because you are too overloaded to notice. Now think about how this shows up in learning. You try to understand something new, something complex. And you are presented with too much information at once. Too many concepts. Too many examples, too many details. And instead of learning, you just feel confused. Your brain cannot organize it all. It cannot connect the pieces. It cannot separate what is important from what is not. So you remember nothing. Or worse, you remember it wrong. You create false connections. You misunderstand key points. You think you learned something when you actually learned the opposite. This is why bad teaching overloads students. It dumps everything at once. It assumes more information means more learning. But it does not. It just creates cognitive load. And cognitive load kills learning. Students who are overloaded do not learn more. They learn less. They make more mistakes. They give up faster, not because they are lazy, but because their brain cannot handle the volume. And here is the thing. You do this to yourself constantly. You open 10 browser tabs when you only need one. You try to multitask when your brain can only focus on one thing well. You take on multiple projects when one would be hard enough. You set 5 goals when achieving one would be an accomplishment. And you wonder why you feel scattered. Why you make careless errors. Why you forget important details. It is not because you are incapable. It is because you are overloaded. And overload makes everyone incapable. Think about the difference between how you think when you are calm versus when you are overwhelmed. When you are calm, problems feel solvable. You see solutions clearly. You make good choices. You notice mistakes before you make them. But when you are overwhelmed, everything feels impossible. Simple problems feel complex. Easy decisions feel hard. And you make choices you later regret. The difference is not intelligence, it is cognitive load. When your mental workspace is cluttered, everything suffers. This is the trap. Cognitive load bias makes you believe that handling more makes you stronger, that juggling more proves you are capable, that thinking about everything means you are being thorough. But it does not, it just means you are exceeding your capacity. And when you exceed your capacity, you do not rise to the challenge. You fall below your baseline, you become a worse thinker, a worse decision maker, a worse problem solver, all because you tried to do too much at once. Now think about the people who seem to make great decisions under pressure. The ones who stay calm when things get chaotic. The ones who solve problems while everyone else panics. You think they are just smarter, or more experienced, or naturally gifted. But most of the time, they are just better at managing cognitive load. They simplify. They prioritize. They focus on one thing at a time. They reduce the mental clutter. And because of that, their brain has space to actually think, to see clearly, to make good choices. They are not thinking more. They are thinking less, but better. This means reducing cognitive load is not about lowering your standards. It is about protecting your ability to think. When you have too much on your mental plate, you do not need to try harder. You need to remove things. When you feel overwhelmed by options, you do not need more analysis. You need fewer options. When you are stuck on a problem, you do not need to consider more angles. You need to focus on one angle deeply. Because depth beats breadth when your brain is limited. And your brain is always limited. So here's what you need to understand. Your brain is powerful, but it is not infinite. It can handle complexity, but only in small doses. It can solve hard problems, but only one at a time. And when you ignore those limits, you do not become superhuman. You just become ineffective. You make mistakes you should not make. You miss things you should see. You choose badly when you should choose well. All because you overloaded yourself. Cognitive load bias tells you that considering everything makes you thorough, but it does not. It makes you scattered. It tells you that multitasking makes you efficient, but it does not. It makes you sloppy. It tells you that pushing through overwhelm makes you tough, but it does not. It just makes you tired. And tired brains make terrible decisions. Stop trying to hold everything in your mind at once. Stop believing that more information means better choices. Stop pushing yourself past your cognitive limits and wondering why you keep making mistakes. Your brain has a workspace, and that workspace has limits. Respect them. Work within them. Simplify when things get complex. Focus when things get scattered. Reduce when things feel overwhelming. Because the goal is not to think about everything. The goal is to think clearly about what matters. And you cannot think clearly when your brain is drowning in information, so stop drowning it. Give it space. Give it focus. Give it one thing at a time. And watch how much better you become at actually thinking. Subscribe if you want to stop overloading your brain and start using it properly.